Okay, what if I told you that while the whole world is looking the other way, India is pulling off three enormous and what seem to be completely contradictory power plays, all at the exact same time? It sounds absolutely impossible, right? But it's a strategy that could be unfolding as we speak. We're going to break down how India is juggling these complex relationships with the US, Russia, and Europe to basically forge its own path. This is a geopolitical masterclass in the making, and you want to stay till the end because some shocking things I am going to reveal in this video. Now, let's get back to it.
So what is this so-called impossible strategy? Well, picture this. You have the United States tightening the screws with sanctions on its adversaries, but then it turns around and gives India a special waiver to buy Russian oil. At the same time, New Delhi is finalizing a massive, high-tech deal with Germany to build state-of-the-art submarines. And, as if that's not enough, India's own defense exports are suddenly smashing every record, reaching an all-time high. Now, these aren't just random events happening in a vacuum. No, they are carefully placed pieces of a coordinated strategy that is literally changing the rules of global power.
All right, let's start with the first piece of this puzzle, the incredibly high-stakes game of oil politics. For years, you've had US sanctions aiming to choke off Russia's oil money clashing directly with India's desperate need for energy security. This has been a huge point of friction. So what on earth would make Washington suddenly decide to blink?
That right there is the central question. It seems completely backwards, doesn't it? I mean, the whole point of sanctions is to create this united economic front to put pressure on your opponent. So why would Washington carve out an exception for one of the world's biggest energy consumers? Well, the answer isn't about friendship or ideology. It's about cold, hard, economic reality. And here's the fundamental clash, laid out plain and simple. On one side, Washington's goal is crystal clear: isolate Russia. On the other side, you have India's reality, which is an absolute non-negotiable mission: secure affordable energy for 1.4 billion people. These two goals were on a collision course, just waiting for a crash. But then, a potential crisis in the Middle East, something that could threaten a critical choke point like the Strait of Hormuz, well, that changes the entire calculation.
The whole thing really boils down to one number: $200. You see, US officials suddenly realized that if they forced India out of the Russian oil market, it would trigger a frantic global bidding war for what's left. Crude oil prices could skyrocket to absolutely catastrophic levels. We're talking $150, maybe even $200 a barrel. A shock like that wouldn't just hurt India, it would cripple the American economy and completely devastate Europe. So this waiver, it's not a gift. It is a pragmatic, quiet admission that India is now a critical stabilizer in the global energy market, a pressure release valve preventing a worldwide economic meltdown.
Okay, now for the second pillar of this strategy. This one takes us from the surface of the ocean deep into the silent depths below. While the oil deal was grabbing all the headlines, a much quieter and maybe even more significant development for long-term security was happening. For decades, India's submarine fleet was seen as a major weakness. Well, that is about to change, fundamentally.
We are talking about a massive price tag here for a generational leap in naval power. A deal worth over $11 billion US, one of the largest in the nation's history. And it's all about getting a capability the Indian Navy has desperately needed for years: true long-endurance underwater stealth. This isn't just about buying a few submarines, it's about securing dominance in the deep.
The heart of this deal is a piece of tech that's a total game changer: Air Independent Propulsion, or AIP. Think of a standard submarine like a runner who has to constantly come up for air. It has to surface every couple of days to run its loud diesel engines and recharge its batteries, which makes it super vulnerable to being spotted. AIP changes everything. It's basically a fuel cell that lets a submarine stay completely submerged, totally silent, for weeks at a time. It doesn't just make it a hunter, it turns it into a ghost.
So why Germany? Well, it all came down to two absolutely critical factors. First, the tech itself. The German firm ThyssenKrupp makes some of the most advanced and combat-proven AIP systems on the entire planet. But just as important was the second point. This had to be a real partnership. This deal isn't some off-the-shelf purchase. It involves a full transfer of technology, which means these silent killers are going to be built in India, by Indians at Mumbai's Mazagon docks. This builds up incredible domestic expertise and cements India as a world-class submarine builder. And let's not mince words about what this is really all about. This project sends a direct, unmistakable message to Beijing. As the Chinese Navy continues to expand its presence in the Indian Ocean, it's now going to face a brand new threat: a fleet of silent, indigenously built predators that are incredibly difficult to find and track.
The goal here is to completely alter the underwater balance of power and create a huge deterrent for any adversary in the region.
All right, let's move to the third and final pillar of this triple threat. And this one reveals a fundamental identity shift for India on the world stage. For most of its history, India was famous for one thing, being the world's biggest importer of weapons. That era? It's over. Make in India is no longer just a catchy slogan, it's become a formidable force in the global arms market.
I mean, just look at these numbers. They are absolutely staggering. In 2014, India's defense exports were worth around $120 million US. Now, fast forward just over a decade, and that number is projected to explode to nearly $3.5 billion. That is a 29-fold increase. This isn't gradual growth, folks. This is an exponential leap that has caught a lot of the traditional arms suppliers completely by surprise. So what exactly is India selling? Because this isn't old, low-tech gear. We're talking about some of the most advanced and sought-after systems in the world. You've got the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile being sold to countries like the Philippines. The LCA Tejas fighter jet is getting serious interest from nations all over who are looking for a high-performance, affordable alternative to pricey Western or Russian jets. And it doesn't stop there. Artillery, advanced light helicopters, even sophisticated naval air defense missiles are all part of this growing export portfolio.
And this is where it all comes together, in what we can call the conglomerate effect. See how these pieces fit? India is grabbing top-tier submarine tech from Germany, building its own advanced helicopters, and still maintaining its partnership with Russia for critical missile systems. It's not putting all its eggs in one basket. No way. Instead, it's cherry-picking the best tech from all over the world to build a truly formidable defense capability that isn't dependent on any single foreign power.
So, when you connect these three dots, the oil diplomacy, the submarine deal, and this massive export boom, a totally new picture starts to emerge. This is about so much more than just defense or economics. It's about a fundamental change in India's place in the world. For decades, analysts described India as a balancing power, a nation that just reacts to the moves of others. That is no longer the case.
This powerful quote from the defense minister just perfectly captures this transformation. Think about it. A buyer's navy is always dependent, always a step behind, relying on the whims of foreign suppliers. But a builder's navy, that's sovereign. It controls its own destiny, it builds its own strength, and it projects its own power. This is the shift from being the customer everyone wanted to being the peer that everyone has to respect.
What you're seeing here, this is the essence of India's long-held foreign policy doctrine of strategic autonomy in action. It's the ability to secure an oil waiver from the US, sign a huge tech deal with Europe, maintain defense ties with Russia, and build its own industrial future, all at the same time. It's the freedom to chase your own national interests without being forced to pick a side in someone else's fight. This is how a rising leading power behaves.
And that leaves us with one final provocative thought. The old global order is clearly crumbling. In this chaotic, multipolar world we find ourselves in, is India just adapting, or is it actively writing the new rules? By engaging with all sides while simultaneously building its own undeniable strength, India might just be drafting the new rulebook for the 21st century. The question isn't if India will be a major power anymore, but what kind of power it will ultimately choose to be. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for the latest updates and watch the video coming up on your screen.